Welcome back. I'm Austin Westfall. Hal Kempfer still standing by as well to discuss the latest on the election in Venezuela. And Hal, I want to just update the audience on this. I know we were talking about this as the week progressed. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Thursday said that the opposition was the clear winner in Venezuela's recent presidential election and not the current authoritarian leader. Washington's backing comes as regional leaders are urging President Nicolás Maduro to show proof of his self-proclaimed victory over opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez. Hal, we talked to you about this election, but now the U.S. is publicly confirming a victor. That's what's new here. Why is this election important from our perspective? Why is it that the U.S. needs to chime in?
Well, at one time, Venezuela was a staunch U.S. ally. Way back when I was a young Marine officer, we had a Venezuelan officer that was training alongside us, and I've had numerous people I know who have served in Venezuela over the years as part of our U.S. commitment there. And then when Hugo Chavez came in, and then Maduro being, his regime being the legacy of that, the U.S. was kicked out. They cozied up to China, Russia, and of course Cuba constantly. And they have basically created this autocratic system that has destroyed the economy. Part of what happens is because the economy is so bereft, you have this massive influx of immigration to the United States. Now, some of it is, honestly, a lot of it is, a number of them are, basically escaping political oppression. But also the economy is just absolutely flatlined there. And so it's an economic basket case. So we want Venezuela to turn around. We would like to see Venezuela, obviously be back as a working democracy, but also as a functional society that can take care of its people, so they're not all fleeing. Maduro's election, he just stole it, and there is nothing out there. His own handpicked election commission said he won by 51%. They provided no statistics on that other than say 51%. I think if you were to ask them why 51%, I'm sure they would say, well, that's what it would take for him to win, so he got 51%. The reality is the opposition very smartly looked at the receipts, and apparently they get a receipt when they vote in Venezuela, and did a very exact tally. They collected receipts, and they have the numbers, and they have the proof that the opposition got 66 or 67% of the vote, and Maduro's party only got about 31% of the vote. That is an overwhelming loss for Maduro. And so the U.S. has weighed in. Other countries have weighed in. Argentina's weighed in. There's a little bit more on the Argentina side of this. But Uruguay's weighed in. Peru's weighed in. A number of other countries, Mexico and other countries, have said, hey, wait, we want to see those numbers. They haven't quite said, it's very clear Maduro lost. They said, just show us, you have to show us the numbers that you won. But the U.S. is leading other countries, in the hemisphere saying, hey, look, he lost. He lost, and you need to bring in the Machado party. You need to bring in the winner, and Maduro needs to go away. And that's where the situation stands. Although the military is loyal, or at least the senior military officers are loyal and aligned to Maduro. And you're already seeing, violence on the streets in Caracas.
That brings me to my next question. In an authoritarian-ruled state, is there any way to actually prevent Maduro from doing what he appears to be doing? Are statements like this from the U.S. and from other countries the extent of what can be done?
Well, it does change things. And I'll tell you the change on this is that by saying it was a stolen election, we not only recognized, we not only said, hey, Maduro lost, we said that Urrutia, the opposition candidate that won, is the actual winner. He is the president of that country. That allows us another sphere. In fact, Brazil is kind of a linchpin right now with Lula down there, and basically, Maduro is reaching out to him to try and find anybody who will say, yes, he did win. But even he's standing back a little bit on this one because he realizes repercussions, because more sanctions than they've seen before, could be levied, and there could be some very serious draconian international actions against what's just happened down there. That's what he's very concerned about. By the way, I would point out that prior to this election, and because of this election in many ways, Venezuela was looking at invading Guyana right next door. They wanted to take a part of Western Guyana because they wanted to seize some offshore oil fields within the exclusive economic zone that Guyana controls in that area, potentially extremely rich fields. Venezuela has phenomenal amount of oil and gas, which they have totally messed up over the last decade or more, to the point where their gas and oil industry doesn't really function anymore. It's an absolute disaster. So now they want to steal the next country's gas and oil capability. That's also something that we, Great Britain, and others do not want to see, which is a war breaking out between Guyana and Venezuela. There's just a lot of reasons why we're putting our foot down on this election, saying, hey, look, Maduro lost, the Machado party won. It's time to change regimes. And interestingly, some of the junior officers reportedly in the military, these are captains and below, are telling their troops, it's time to stand up for democracy. It's time to stand up for the elections and the people, and these corrupt colonels and generals that that Maduro had appointed or had promoted, artificially promoted and paid off or whatever. They got to go. So I don't know what's going to happen down there, but I got to tell you, there's a lot of activity on the streets right now, and you might see the military split in terms of where their loyalties lie.
Let's tie this into what you and I were talking about before the break. America, the U.S., has said what they feel about this election. Has Russia chimed in on this?
Russia's aligned to Maduro. I haven't heard. It's very possible. I just hadn't seen if they've recognized Maduro as winning. If you told me they had, I would say no surprise there. All right. He had been reaching out and involved with Russia for quite some time. The first thing I saw was that Russia was kind of saying something that sounded very pro-Maduro, but they hadn't quite gone so far as to say they absolutely agreed with the election results. That may have changed. I just had not seen that. China also has a lot of things going on with Maduro, and they've been trying to work with Venezuela as well. So I fully expect, and of course, Cuba is kind of almost, it's a symbiotic state with them, in terms of all the relationship they've been having with them. So I'm fully expecting those three countries to back Maduro. But I'm looking at what's happening in the rest of the hemisphere. Eventually Mexico and some of these other countries that are asking for results are going to get tired of asking for results. And as the data comes out that the election was clearly a win for the Machado party, that I would fully expect that a number of other countries are going to join the U.S., Argentina, and others and say, hey, look, we recognize the opposition won that election, and it could become a hemispheric thing. In fact, I would not be surprised within the hemisphere that we start to see some rather interesting alignments going on, which I wouldn't be surprised to see, Ecuador, certainly Colombia, others weigh in very heavily to say, hey, look, need to respect the elective process here. And what's going on. And of course, Brazil, being the largest country in South America, is kind of a linchpin that whole thing. But when Argentina is weighing in so heavily, you look to the biggest countries, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, to see which way they're going to go. And of course, Colombia right next door. And once you have that block basically deciding that basically Maduro is an illegal regime, if you will, that may change stuff dramatically, and certainly it's going to empower the opposition within Venezuela in ways that the opposition has not been empowered before. I don't know if they're going to be successful in overthrowing the Maduro regime, but I have to tell you, I go back a few years. I got this gray hair for a reason, and I can remember that people at the end of the Cold War said, no. Romania's not going to, nothing will happen there. There's no way that the people of Romania will overthrow Ceausescu. And then the next thing you know, pictures are coming out. Ceausescu and his wife have been summarily executed in a backyard somewhere. And you go, well, I guess things can change rather dramatically. So, and I'm not saying that's going to be Maduro's fate, but I am saying that these things can go in ways that the conventional wisdom may not always be correct.
There is so much going in so many different parts of the world. You and I didn't even get to the Middle East today, Hal. We'll leave it there for now. Take care. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too, Austin.
Let's slide away for a quick break. We're back in 2 minutes.